Welcome to another edition of Thought Leaders Live, where we talk with thought leaders in business, life, and all points in between. Excited today to be joined by Bleu Blakslee, founder and managing director of Quantum Philanthropy Partners. Bleu, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for
Yeah,
the
we're going
invitation.
to talk about the future of philanthropy, innovation, families, and the next generation of giving. And we're going to explore how philanthropy is becoming more intentional, innovation driven, and connected to long-term family and organizational values. And boy, sure seems like a timely topic for our society and just our economic structure right now. So excited to get into it, Bleu. But before we do, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your personal story, which you shared with me before we jumped on a little bit, really fascinating, and a little bit about Quantum Philanthropy Partners?
Sure. So I'm 38 plus years in the nonprofit sector, both national and international. I've had the great honor of working with with all organizations that are doing amazing work, including Save the Children, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, Mercy Ships Child Fund International, and others. And predominantly in the 38 years, I've been really asked to lean forward with regards to paying attention to what's happening in the sector. Formally, in the last 10 years or so, I've been asked to focus on what we call emerging markets. And that's really keeping a pulse check on the landscape that is currently happening. So, for example, there's a lot of technology and innovation and building that we're all seeing. How does that translate to philanthropy? How do we, on the nonprofit side, show up for those conversations? We have, things happening with regards to the next generation, looking at how they want to have impact. What does that look like? And also different types of ways of engaging that are new, both on the philanthropic side, the advisor side, and also on the nonprofit side. So just being a thread for those conversations and really helping to advance the conversation of philanthropy in all spaces.
Fascinating stuff. How did you personally, Blue, tell us a little bit about how you grew into this role and a little bit more about your journey?
Sure, thank you. So you asked me the question earlier, and I like to be reminded that as I grew up, I came from a family of entrepreneurs, and it was always in the thread of, and how do we give back? So I think that built on a moment in time very early on where my parents basically said, hold up, we know you are going to advance to your next, education, college. But what if you take a little bit of time and spend, looking at the world, participating in the world, and seeing where then you can give back to the world? So I had the great honor of actually participating in a group called Up With People in the, and I'm going to date myself, in the 80s. And I traveled for a year, both nationally and internationally, with a cast of 115 students, 18 to 25, representing 16 different countries. Every third day, we were performing, we were living with host families, and we were volunteering. And at the end of that time, which was a year of traveling, I just knew I needed to get to college, but I also knew I didn't want to give up that experience. So I had the great opportunity to work full time in their headquarters while going to school. And at the end of those 4 years, I also had another mentor who said, hold up, what would it look like if you married your skill set with purpose? And for whatever reason, at that moment in time, even though I had heard it multiple times before, it was the right moment. And I pin that as the moment that the reason why I'm 38 years in the field, because he asked me that question and I began the journey. And every few years, I ask myself, am I doing the right thing? Am I giving back the right way? And every time I say, I'm exactly where I need to be. And
Wow.
it's an honor to be contributing with many other people in the sector.
Wow. Well, we definitely need more people with that mindset. Um, let's jump into a little bit now, just about philanthropy in general, and um, maybe you could give us kind of a level set for a lot of people who aren't familiar with just philanthropy in general, and because I think you're talking about more at a larger scale donations or things like that? I mean, maybe just tell me about the field in general, and how you approach it, and what you do to how and what types of clients you work with.
Sure. So there's a lot right now as going on in the philanthropic space. I think the term that I hear fairly regularly is reimagining. So you will see a lot of data out there about how much money is moving into philanthropy. I think there was some concern about what that looked like during the pandemic. I think people have been extremely generous, even through very difficult times in transition. Uh, you will see new tools out there like the Donor Advised Fund, which people are activating on and using. And you see the trajectory of the numbers increasing in that tool for various reasons. So I feel like, in general, there is great inclination for giving back and having impact. And no matter, you know, where you are giving time, talent, treasure, uh, people want to figure out how to engage. And so I always am very inspired by that. And also, we've got a lot of things happening in the world. There's a bit of I would say, a pause that the sector is talking about as far as people feeling like, in this moment, where do I give? How do I give? Where is it most meaningful? And that is why there is
Sorry, I got a little thunderstorm rolling through here.
that's a highlight on the topic. That's why I think that this is a moment, especially. So the other stat that is important to be aware of is that there's a lot of talk about this transfer of wealth that's happening. And there's a projection of $124 trillion transferring between now and 2048. And and in that, there is this conversation about potentially 12 to 18 trillion going to charities. So the question, is, are we ready for that? What does that look like on all sides of the fence? And with the things that are happening in the world, it's really imperative for us to bring as much clarity that we can to the conversation of philanthropy, to help people find where they want to have impact, how they want to have impact, the trust to make that happen, right? So there's just a lot happening in the philanthropic space. But what I love is, personally, over my years, I've had the great honor of sitting with individuals and hearing what drives their impact, how they want to uh, connect with organizations, their legacy that they want to give to their children, to their grandchildren, and that process. And that always inspires me, even when we are looking at sort of a reimagine conversation right now with philanthropy. There are amazing leaders uh, in all these organizations that have basically brought their superpowers to the nonprofit mission, and they're out there on the front line doing the hard work. And this is really, I think, a moment where you bring everybody to the table. So funders, nonprofits, intermediaries, next gen leaders who are thinking and reimagining. You bring everybody to the table because that's how we're going to, I think, have the biggest impact and solve questions in the world that we really want to get to and advance that.
Well, tell me a little bit about, you how in the show description you talk about how it's becoming more intentional, innovation driven, and connected to long-term family values, organizational values. Tell me a little bit about how it was in the past, and then how you're seeing it change now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to bring that conversation to the advisor space. So, for example, and I'll just say very quickly, I'm a co-trainer at Stanford with Stanford PACs and International Advisors in Philanthropy on a curriculum for advisors on the landscape of philanthropy, as well as Daylight, which is an entity that started 3 years ago, and it's for advisors. It's a very contemporary curriculum. So, with that being said, I think in the past we've had these tools, but what we're trying to do is meet the moment with this transfer of wealth. So, what is needed in this moment is really everybody upskilling on the opportunities, the options, the understanding of philanthropy, where those intersections with the conversation with advisors can happen, how everybody can help each other to create the impact that a family wants to have. So it should be less tension, more knowledge, and more capacity, right, to move the needle, whether it is child trafficking or hunger or emergency events that happen around the world. We want to meet the moment. And in order to do that, everybody has to, I think, feel like they understand like what are the tools in their tool bag, who are the people that they can bring into that conversation, and how can we then in a trustworthy manner move that conversation forward to create impact.
Okay, talk to me a little bit about the tools in the tool bag. We talked a little bit about AI and digital assets, but and you mentioned a fund before. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that in some more detail. But what are the new tools, and how are things different in philanthropy?
Sure. One of the conversations that I think comes up a lot is around the donor advised fund. So it is basically a tool that someone can put their resources in. Once they put their resources in there, they do give up the the right to those funds, but they get to grant out from that account. They get to recommend from that account. Um,
I'm sorry, is it like a mutual fund you're talking about, or is it a way to combine a bunch of different causes?
so you usually find a donor advised fund can be found at some of our large institutions. So
Okay.
Fidelity, Schwab, Morgan Stanley, others have the capacity for you to open up a donor advised fund. And you get a tax break for that, an incentive for that. And then you can choose to direct or to recommend a grant through your fund to charities of choice.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and you can also actually pass that on to your children. So if you haven't spent down in that fund and you want that to be a legacy, you can pass that down to your children so that they carry on the distribution or the recommendation of the distribution.
Oh, fantastic. I know that the tax code changed a little bit with the standard deduction. But we're talking about giving, higher income levels. I'm assuming here.
Actually, so if you look at the landscape of donor advised funds, which has been around for a little while, you're going to see this significant uptick in funds going in that direction. And so basically, it is it's a tool that you use for distribution, specifically for philanthropy. And it has a lot of great advantages because sometimes you don't know exactly where you want to give. And so when you put that in that fund, you may use that over multiple years of distribution because you're organizing your thoughts around how do you want to have impact. And you still need to decide which organizations do I want to align my giving with. And so that is one advantage of a donor advised fund.
Okay.
Among
What are
others.
some other tools, and talk to me a little bit about the digital assets and the AI that you're seeing right now?
Yeah. So another conversation that has come into the landscape is cryptocurrency, which is again a non-cash asset that I think the nonprofit sector has been upskilling around. We've had great intermediaries like the Giving Block, which was founded actually by two next gen leaders who have now moved on to their next venture. But what has been great is that has helped build the philanthropic conversation for those who hold that type of asset and to use that asset for good. And so that's a conversation that I think, we have a pretty good understanding of how to show up and we have ways to help us mitigate some of the concerns on the nonprofit side through an intermediary like the Giving Block. There's also a group out there called Endowment, Endaoment. And that is another source where you can use cryptocurrency and it's in a DAF format. And that was started also by, I would consider it like a next gen leader, Robbie Heeger.
Okay. Um, Talk to me about now. Did we touch on some of the giving models, how they're changing? I mean, we talked about that fund, got crypto. Is there anything else in terms of the giving models?
I I would bring attention to there's a lot of collective giving conversation happening. So there are different platforms that allow you to come in together and pool resources and then determine how to deploy those funds. I think that's a tool that is getting a lot of additional focus right now because if people are a little worried about how they want to show up or how they want to distribute like that joining forces together, whether it's multiple family offices or individuals who have the same interest and focus, that's a great way to do it. So that is a conversation out there. I would also bring attention to social impact work. So basically an opportunity where people fund and they may get a return on their investment. They may not. It sort of depends. But the end result is for impact. And you have organizations out there, large organizations who have funds. So, for example, the Nature Conservancy has a fund, American Heart has a fund, Save the Children has a fund. Um, and it's an interesting way to if you are on the venture side or the family office side, if you want to see how you can help and then potentially, you know, get a return, that could be a vehicle that you might like to explore.
Oh, interesting. You mentioned family offices. Let's talk about family philanthropy and why that's becoming such a powerful tool, not only for legacy, but governance, next generation leadership.
Yes. So when I had mentioned the transfer of wealth that there's a lot of conversation about, there is also notation with regards to how that's transferring over, percentage that's transferring over, and our next generation is in line to determine how they want to show up around philanthropy because they are going to be the recipients of this transfer of wealth. So, with that being said, there's a lot of conversation around helping families really find the thread that connects them or the things that each generation wants to champion. So, for example, at Stanford, we did a curriculum working on giving tools to families that help to make that conversation of what is my mission, what is the vision for our family, what's important to us, and how do we want to advance our philanthropy as a tool. And there are other entities out there like Daylight and uh, other organizations that are building those kind of tools to help the conversation so that families can really look at, okay, what's important to us. And so that's a critical conversation that I think is valuable for families to look at. There is also the stat out there with regards to whether or not the next gen will retain the advisor that the first gen has. And philanthropy is a topic that is being lifted up as far as a way to bridge that conversation. So, advisors who can help uh, bring philanthropy to the table as far as like what matters to families will help in that transition of those funds and also have a chance to really determine like what does that next generation want to do and how do they want to deploy their funds when that transition happens.
I'm curious, Blue. We've had plenty of guests on here who uh, coach people in family businesses, who are in a family business. And I've got to imagine on the philanthropic side, there's some of the same struggles that people have on the business side. There's different priorities, there's different opinions. Do you help people kind of guide people through this, or is that more an advisor's role? And do you see that or that as an issue, or do you find a lot of families are pretty well aligned out of the gates?
So I've had the great fortune to be in some rooms where you have multiple generations specifically coming together to talk about, you know, their investment side, their uh, business, and also their philanthropy. And it is it's important to recognize that every family, right, has different dynamics that are happening. And so the more that you can be in conversation, the more that you can talk about values and alignment, and each generation hearing, the other generation. So that is critical in this process. And I would say that, on my side as an advisor, my job is to help to be that intermediary with those kinds of conversations, as well as the transactional, like this is how I want to deploy these funds and have impact. So it's both because they are connected as far as identifying how families want to have impact and looking back at their legacy, right? Like that process should be joyous. It should be an expression of the family and all the things that they have done and what they want to say to the world. So you know wherever there is friction or tension, we want to help that process to then in turn have meaningful impact.
So I do a lot of work on the with my digital marketing agency and helping companies grow. And it's very coming together with who's our customer, what's our strategy, how are we going to get the message out to sell products. I'm assuming, with what you do with quantum, that it's kind of similar in that you probably need a strategy and you need to figure out who you're helping and then how you're distributing or giving. Can you kind of equate the two, or tell me where there's differences?
Sure. So I completely agree. I'd like to say that I've 10 of me, but I don't. The great thing is that I have a wonderful network of peer advisors and professionals that I regularly talk to and draw upon, and really appreciate the work that they lead in the space. So, with that, I agree. Strategy is really important. I know, as far as identifying the areas where I've spent maximum time or I feel like I can be a value add, uh, that's where I want to build out, the conversation of here's what I can offer. That includes, I think, my tenure in the space, having seen a large landscape, and also having the great privilege of being with best in class organizations to see sort of the full breadth of philanthropy, the engagement for donors, the impact process, the new building that's happening right on the social impact side, the venture side, using different types of assets, having that bandwidth. Those are the type of conversations that I strategically can bring back, which I've been very honored and grateful to be in rooms where I know philanthropy is a priority for family offices and leaders, and to try to help share that expertise and help be an intermediary uh, to those conversations uh, along the way.
Blue, in that capacity, where do you see a lot of philanthropic organizations really struggling? What are some of the two to three top areas where they really struggle these days, and how do you help them?
Right. So right now, I think there's a couple of things that very anecdotally I'm seeing. So one is there is this really vibrant space of building, right? We're in this innovation moment with AI and technology and so forth. And so that is a question for nonprofits to determine, like, how do we use it? How do we use it for our mission? How do we show our ROI? How do we be most productive? And so that is like an ongoing conversation. And then there's also this landscape that people are working on navigating. So, again, that reimagine conversation. What are the tools that I've been used to? I'm used to diversifying my, you know, revenue stream this way. I haven't really looked at these new things. Should I be looking at these new things? What's that strategy look like? Can I bring in the expertise around telling you why this would be important, or how to pilot this, or how to look at scaling this? So I think that's the process where I can be helpful on the nonprofit side. I was brought in by an organization who asked me to speak to their executive team, and when I asked them, you know, why, early on, it was because they were looking for leaders who had that macro kind of lens on the sector to be able to help them move and navigate through questions that they've been thinking about, but now they need to get to, and really helping them uh, like, what should we be looking at? How should we consider entering this conversation? What does this look like? So you know, I love those conversations. I love to give back to the sector, and anything that I have done over my tenure, I happily share that information with clients and so forth.
Okay, Blue. Well, we are coming up on the top of the hour. If someone wants to work with you, if they want to learn a little bit more about what Quantum Philanthropy Partners does and how you can help them, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
So that would be the website or my email. So the website is quantumphilanthropypartners.com, and my email is my first and last name at philanthropypartners.com. So it's Bleu Blakslee at philanthropyquantumpartners.com.
Okay. And one more time, that fund you mentioned at the beginning, was that something that anybody can access, or you need your talk to your advisor about creating a fund like that?
Right. So I think you're talking about donor advised funds. And
Yeah.
yes. And so you can, if you are connected to, any of the top institutions, you have an account there, or you don't have an account there, you can connect with them and they will be able to lead you through that conversation of how to set up a donor advised fund. You can also go to their websites and uh, search for donor advised funds. It'll take you through where you need to go to set one up. It's pretty easy. And most advisors can help direct you to that process.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. It's very illuminating. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing some perspectives on the world of philanthropy with us. Really appreciate your time, Blue.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Sure. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on another edition of Thought Leaders Live. We'll catch you on the next episode.